Hey guys, this will be my first video, so it'll probably be pretty bad, but bear with me. Uh, Wanted to go ahead and start putting some things out there that I've learned over the past 2 years, give or take, and I don't know, just to put it out there, I guess. I'm definitely not here because I think I know it all, and I'm not going to debate anybody for that matter, but I'm going to address John 8:58, I guess. Just start here. For Abraham was, I am. Now, I'm sure a lot of stuff that I'm going to say, like they said, there's nothing new under the sun, so I didn't invent it. So I'll probably just break it into a couple of pieces so it's easier to digest. But I actually want to point out a couple things that I think get overlooked in this whole argument about this verse. If you start at verse 45, 8:45, and go down to 8:59, you'll see the whole conflict take place. And the thing I want to do is actually point out, the first thing I want to point out anyway, is 54. 8:54. It gets overlooked, I think, constantly. John 8:54, Jesus answered, "If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say, He is our God." Well, I think that would tell you right there who the Jews thought their God was. And it wasn't triune in its nature. But the other thing is Jesus says, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. So he's given testimony. I think everyone would agree of some form or another. And then you get to verse 8:58, and he says, "Truly, truly, before Abraham was, I am." And I think the first problem with this is obviously is that the Trinitarian position treats it as a name. It's grammar. It's a sentence. You can't just treat it both ways at the same time. Now, if you want to treat it as a title, which is pretty much is what is happening, same as a name, really. But you're ignoring the sentence, and the goofier part of it all to me is that before Abraham was, I am Yahweh. Is how it's taken. But then he says, like I said in 54, he says, "If I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me." Well, I think everyone would agree that his glory, besides the prayer in the garden, would be culminated in his resurrection. So I think that's pretty clear right there. So with him saying that, you're basically forced in this position that he says, "I'm not going to glorify myself," and then he says, "I'm the creator of the universe, time, space, everything." And to me, that is glorifying yourself. I think this just a simple point to be made in all of this is it is what it is. To say you're Yahweh is to glorify yourself. It denotes you have to be worshipped as God. And I don't think that is what was intended here by any stretch of the imagination. Getting to the word Ganamahi. You can go to Biblos. I use that for a lot of quick reference stuff. May not be as in depth as some people would like, but it's pretty straightforward. You look up the word Ganamahi in that passage, and it gives you basically a word study note. That's word 1096. Ganamahi, properly to emerge, transitioning from one point, realm, condition to another. Now, it also means to become. Now, you can say nothingness is a state, and you transition from that, but I think more correctly, death is a state, and you transition from that. To have been and to be again, I think is more clearly defined than never having existed at all, because you wouldn't know the difference. Um, so that's, a short take on that. And then it goes on to tell you about the equivalent and ordinary equative verb to be, the I, me. And it's funny that this word actually is a play. It has something involved with ego, I, me, even though it's not equivalent. So go read that for yourself. Read Biblos and see what you get from looking up the definition of that word. You take a quick look at Matthew Henry's commentary on John 8:45 to 59. Now, Henry is a pretty popular commentary. I read it in my Trinitarian days. And when you get to it, he says, before Abraham was, I am. This speaks Abraham a creature, and our Lord the Creator. Well, therefore might he make himself greater than Abraham. I am is the name of God in Exodus 3:14. That is utterly false and just wrong. I'm going to get to Exodus 3:14 because that's actually what caught my attention in all of this. It brings you to a different understanding of this. And like I said, I'm not here because I'm better than anybody or anything else. This is just what I've observed. So as we go on here, like I said, the Trinitarian claim is that he's saying, I am Yahweh. Now, we go to the Exodus saying in 3:14. This is where all of this comes from. Now, if we take a quick look, I'm going to bring you to Isaiah 9:6 just for a second so we can get an understanding of what I'm trying to say. If you go to Isaiah 9:6, in your Bible, it's plainly stated that it's trying to say Yeshua is God is the argument, even though Isaiah 9:6 is not quoted in the New Testament. Before and after is quoted, but not that verse itself. But if you go to the Septuagint and you read the Jewish people and how they understood this verse when they translated it into Greek, and it has its problems. There's some people that say Septuagint's worthless. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. But you will see that this passage, it seems to point to Hezekiah more than it does to Jesus. And the mere fact it's not quoted in the New Testament, doesn't settle the case, but also proves it was not something that they were trying to prove. Nobody was quoting Isaiah 9:6 trying to make it, to be the proof verse for all of this. But the case in Exodus 3:14 is a lot simpler. And the reason I brought up Isaiah 9:6 is to go back to the more Jewish thinking in this. And is that, if you look at the Hebrew of Exodus 3:14, you'll see that the term there is Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya. In our English Bibles, it comes out as I am who I am, or I am that I am, or something along those lines. Speak to anyone who understands Hebrew, which I have many times, or consult in Hebrew, English Old Testament, and you'll see one of the translations as I shall be as I shall be, and that is particularly from the Stone Edition Torah. It's pretty much the closest, I think, that honestly we can come into making that term in English. It carries a forward sense, and you could say, yeah, an eternal sense. Now, in looking all this up, I came across a website that I think put it just better than I can, and that's torahofmessiah.com. And it says, Yeshua responded to a simple question with I am and did not intend to imply he was God. By extracting 3:14 from its context, Trinitarians deceptively conceal the actual name of God. The key in Exodus 3:15 and 16, which Trinitarians conveniently forget, and Exodus 6:3 by referencing them along with the actual name, Yahweh or Yahuwah, which is used 6,519 times elsewhere in the Tanakh. One cannot escape the clear conclusion that Yahweh, not I am, is the name of God. And this is absolutely true. It's plain. I am is not a name, as simple as that. But also, this only works because of the English game. And I say that if you look at Exodus 3:14 to 16, you'll see that I am who I am, and he said, say to the people, I am has sent you. Now, if you go to verse 15, you'll see the Lord in all capitals. In verse 16, you'll see the Lord in all capitals. This is a shame. I don't know why they didn't put the name in the text plainly in English. I totally disagree with that. If you want to use the word God, I'm not a fan of it, but you can. But I'm just telling you, this is part of what creates this confusion. If you restored the name and we used a more Hebrew tilted understanding, verse 14, God said to Moses, I will be what I will be. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, he who is has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of our fathers, and the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. And he goes on, verse 16, gather the elders and tell them they Israel together and say to them, Yahweh, the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, etc., etc. So when the name is restored, it's really not much of a case at all. There's nothing to be afraid of here. And then you look at Ego I Me. It's used in the New Testament book of John. I actually got a chart of this. I don't have open right now, but I think it's like 15 to 20 times or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But every time it's pretty much translated, I am he. I mean, that's kind of the connotation, I am he. And they purposely left it out here. Before Abraham was, I am he. And, you know, I guess that's what they want to do, so they do it. Also got some quotations here from a Wikipedia article on the I am that I am. A common English translation in JPS, among others, of the response God used in the Hebrew Bible when Moses asked for his name in Exodus 3:14. It is one of the most famous verses in the Torah. Haya means existed or was in Hebrew. Ahaya is the first person singular imperfect form and is usually translated in English Bibles as I will be or I shall be. For example, Exodus 3:12, Ahaya, Ashur, Ahaya literally translates as I will be what I will be, with attendant theological and mystical implications in Jewish tradition. However, in most English Bibles, the phrase is rendered I am that I am. And it says again, it's often contracted into the English I am, and is one of the 7 names of God according to special care by medieval tradition. The phrase is also found in other religious literature used to describe the supreme being, generally referring back to use in Exodus. The word Ahia is considered by many rabbinical scholars to be the first person derivation of the Tetragrammaton. So the fact that he uses a simple phrase in Greek, if that's, in fact, since we don't have a Hebrew copy of John, to my knowledge, um, we do have a Hebrew Matthew that is actually very interesting, and I'll do some videos about that. But there's, you go to the wiki and you read it yourself, even in the Septuagint, Exodus 3:14, and God said unto Moses, I am he who is. And he said, thus shalt you say to the children of Israel, he who is has sent me to you, and that word being Ha'an. But the name's given. And I think that is what people completely forget about. We forget that this word is used in other places, and we kind of ignore it. And I just want to take a quick second and go to Isaiah 6:3. And you look there, chapter 6, from verse 1, with the name restored. It says, but Yahweh said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but my name, Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them. So, the name is a big deal, and I really don't understand why we've taken it out. And I have a suspicion it's because it creates confusion. Now, if we go back to John 8:58, like I said, just read it again, 45 to 58. And as far as this glorifying stuff, we see another thread in Matthew 20:23. He said to them, you will drink my cup, but to sit at my right and my left is not mine to grant, but is for those for whom has been prepared by the Father. In 54, we see that Yeshua reinforces this point. If I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. And the glory there is got to be the resurrection. I don't see any other reason to think about it any other way. And like I said, if you look at it the other way, you basically got him saying, I'm not going to glorify myself. By the way, I'm God. Those are actually pretty glorifying statements, in my opinion. And then those who want to bounce, quickly to Abraham saw my day. There's an interesting thing with that word. And Strong's word 3708 in the Greek means to see with the eyes, to see with the mind, to perceive and know. And I think that's really what this is about. You could look at it in Abraham's lifetime, in Jesus's lifetime or in the time that would come for Abraham to Jesus. But I think you see that a lot in the Greek, is to see with the mind or to perceive. And I think Abraham did perceive something of Christ's day. I really don't know how much he understood about Christ, um, the figure that would emerge in later history. And I don't think it was a ton, but I think he did understand the promise of what would be accomplished through this Christ when it came. So that's the argument. You know, it was who had the truth, and it's clearly about the resurrection if you read about it. And even then, if you want to take it some other way, you know, John, the author of the book himself, states, I write these things so you may believe that he's the Son. So I think that in of itself kind of settles a lot of things. You know, just read it very carefully. Pay attention. He says they judge in the flesh in verse 15. They would die in the sins in verse 22. Implied they were in bondage, 32 to 33. Said they were servants of sin, 34. Said they were out to kill him, 37 and 40. Implied they were spiritually deaf, 43 to 47. Said their father was the devil, 44. Said they were not of Elohim, 47. Accused them of dishonoring him, 49. Accused them of not knowing Yahweh, 55. Accused them of lying, and then proceeded to say he would precede Abraham in the resurrection. Verse 58. And I think when you look at the whole thing as a whole, that's the thing. Now, I have seen several videos from Trinitarians on the aorist tense of Ganamahi, and I just want to point this out. These are some articles I found concerning the word Ganamahi. For those who think it should be read before Abraham existed, I exist. Neither Greek verb is in the perfect tense, past tense. Was is in the aorist tense, and and am is in the present tense. Now was is in a manual grammar of Greek New Testament by Dana and Mantes states. It has time relations only in the indicative, where it is past and hence augmented. The verb ganamihi was is in the infinitive, not the indicative. Therefore, it should not be translated past tense. The same reference says of the infinitive. The aorist infinitive denotes that which is eventual or particular. Abraham will eventually resurrect, which is why the Greek uses the aorist infinitive. This means before Abraham comes to be, or of something of this nature, not before was. And then there's another quote here. I'll skip over that. This is gonna, I'm sure people will have their objections and other things, but the bottom line is, you know, it's a riddle if he's God. It's just a riddle. It's not a clear teaching that's set forth anywhere, much less here. And the mere fact that you have his own witness in verse 54, I'm sorry, calling yourself the creator of heaven and earth and everything is glorifying yourself. You're making yourself out to be God, not in a sense of taking some equality or doing something that they perceived you shouldn't be able to do, but actually being God himself. And this, the evidence of this particular passage is so bad for that. I think that it doesn't merit much thought beyond that. It's just, he'd be glorifying himself. He gave a testimony. No matter what we want to say about John 8:58, he says in verse 54, his glory means nothing if he gives it to himself. And the glory he did receive from the Father was the resurrection. So, that's my 2 cents. Like I said, I'm sure the video is pretty bad, but I thank everybody for watching, and whatever it turns out to be on this channel will turn out to be. I definitely want to make a video about Enoch. There's some other things I want to address. But until then, thank you guys for watching, taking the time, Trinitarian or otherwise. And I guess I'll be seeing you around. Thanks.